Good morning. Good morning. All right. Let's go here and here and here and pull that up. Welcome. Good morning. We are going to be speaking about ADHD. And I love this topic because I think that there's so much potential for incredible transformation for people that are struggling with it. And so my job today is to give you some brief outlines as to what I've seen kind of clinically in the practice, what strategies we deploy to create and help to make some changes with the brain. And yeah, I think that would be enough. Okay, so the first thing when we want to consider about ADHD and the brain is that it has become a scenario of a lack of presence. And I think most people that are experiencing ADHD would agree that part of them battles between being very hyper aroused in their environment and also feeling a sense of feeling settled in their environment. And so part of what I want to deliver to you is how do we take the brain from being hyper aroused and hyper vigilant towards feeling settled, and what are some of the mechanics that arise from that. Now, so I would say, like, if I was to summarize work with people that come in with ADHD, in the back of my mind, it's really about training into presence and presence-based training, because they're generally unsettled with themselves in relationship with their environment. And there's a constant perception of moving pieces and unresolved and things that they need to do, and a scatteredness to some degree, and hyper arousal to some degree. So there's really an inherent lack of settling with the brain now, and with themselves as a human being. So hopefully we'll kind of unpack this for you and give you some info on it. Now, to do things justice, to give us the background information, I think it's generally important to just have the quick overview of the mechanics of the brain. One thing that, oh geez, I wish I remembered what the quote is. It's in my computer, but sorry, just a notification came up for some reason. The quote is that basically all mental health processes, from Parkinson's, schizophrenia, bipolar, dementias, anything they were talking about, kind of brain issues, can actually be rooted down to how organized the brain waves are within the brain. Each brain wave brings a very unique information pattern to us, to our experience. So I want to just review those quickly for you. If you've heard this from me before, just bear with me. It's going to be very quick, but I want to review these. So let's just kind of go with the main ones that we're going to experience in the conscious state. There's delta, which is deep sleep, but there's also theta brainwaves, which is 4 to 7 hertz. And these brain waves basically are the unconscious. They are the unconscious realm. So hypnotists will, kind of bring you into those types of brainwave patterns because they're suggestive in nature. They're unconscious in nature. They bring us into our unconscious world. And so theta, which is generally developmentally happens in age 2 to 6. It's ingraining our inner world with suggestions on best practices of survival, so that those things get habituated and learned and ingrained in. So theta's it like opens up. Theta's a state that creates a suggestibility, because we're shutting off kind of like the the fence of beliefs. And so it kind of just bypasses the information, goes right into the unconscious world. So we don't have a boundary there to discern whether what information coming is right or wrong, is good or bad. And so there's no morality to the information that's coming in, just seeps in basically as truth. The second one is where we kind of move into alpha brainwaves. And alpha brainwaves are the 8 to 12 hertz per second, 8 to 12 hertz frequency, generally in a 6 to 12 age group. And that is a conscious state of relaxation. So the conscious around that is a relaxed state. We still actually have a filter in the alpha state. We're developing a filter there. So we kind of shut off from accepting everything, and we begin to have a brain that can start to question some rules, etc. But this is a conscious, relaxed state. And I'll describe too about these of what I see patterning in ADHD. Then there is beta brainwaves, and beta brainwaves are 12 to 35 hertz, and those are 12 plus in the age category, roughly, give or take. And those now become our defensive filter to weed out information that either we accept or reject. So there's a filter in this type of information, in these brainwaves, because there's more defensiveness that is associated with beta brainwaves. Because you're ruling information out. You want to stop flow. You want to be able to stop flow of information so the system doesn't become overwhelmed. In 12 plus, you have all the information, generally speaking, that you need to survive. So now we can start blocking and filtering out information to new degrees. So that is the basic brainwave patterns. Now, what I see in ADHD, as an example, is I will see a high excessive beta brainwave patterning and a deficient theta. Okay, now theta is moving you into more hormonal repair, deeper states of relaxation, etc. And beta is defensive, high alert, managing the environment. So I will see high excessive on the beta. I will see deficiency, generally speaking, on the theta. And alpha could be in a normalized fashion, or it could be slightly deficient. Either way, there's a hypervigilance, generally speaking, in beta. Okay, now that kind of being set, this is where it calls for a settling. How do we take these beta brainwaves that are hypervigilant and create a scenario where the brain feels more settled within itself as an internal experience, and also feeling more settled with an external environmental experience? Because again, I think most people would agree, if they do struggle with ADHD, that there is a lack of settling. There's a lack of feeling the capacity to be present. And so a process that I bring people through is basically a delabeling process. Now, here's how that works, is that within a person's experience of ADHD, there are going to be parts that they wish that they were able to express. So let's say, for example, I have ADHD, there's the label. Okay, and when I ask people, okay, well, let's break that down a little bit as to what parts do you perceive that you don't have, or that you wish you were able to express? What traits, etc. They're saying, well, I wish I could express, let's use as an example, being present in the moment. Okay, great. And then they would say, I want to not be able to be distracted so easily. And so we'll say, I lack focus, or I'd like to have more focus. Okay, and then I say, okay, well, what else would we kind of say as we break this label down? And they would say, I want to feel more relaxed. Okay, and Okay, that's fair. And I want to experience more stillness. Okay, fair enough. Okay, so then let's say we break this label down, and they have labeled themselves, or they've been labeled by someone to say, you have ADHD, and you have a hyperarousal of the brain, and you have, you're focusing, they meet the criteria subjectively, and through, maybe questionnaire as to like, yeah, you're an ADHD kind of candidate, or you have that personified label. Okay, well, most people don't know what to do with that. But what I do with it is I take that label and I break it down into smaller parts. So now I really get an idea as to, with this label, what kind of baggage they're carrying around, as to what parts they see that they're missing or lacking or wish they had more of. Okay, now, what do I do with this? Well, then what we do is we actually, because the goal, the objective is to create, and I'm just going to write at the bottom, a settling of sorts, a settling of sorts between themselves and their environment. So what I do is I have them actually go through and begin to find areas of their life and where they've expressed moments of being present. And you would be astounded as to how difficult this actually is. But this, to me, is really the clarifying work that needs to get accomplished, that most people don't. Otherwise, they carry the label around. So this is how I delabel things, is we break down the label into smaller bite-sized forms, okay? And actually see what the label is being represented. Kind of like the issues behind the actual label. If we look at the label as like a stone or a rock or a placeholder, well, there's behind that label, behind the curtain, if you unveil that, there's beliefs about oneself that are present, and we're exposing the belief. I believe I'm not present. I believe I'm not focused. I believe I'm not able to relax. I believe I'm not able to be still. And so these are beliefs. And so we're breaking the bias of these beliefs as we unveil what's behind the curtain of this particular label. And so we go through and we find where they express focus. And all of a sudden, they start seeing that they actually have the capacity to be present. They actually have the capacity to focus. They actually have the capacity to be relaxed. And they have the capacity for stillness. Now, what that does is that screws up the beta brainwaves, because beta brainwaves are defensive and they will hold a label, because beta brainwaves are designed to have you survive in the environment. And to survive in the environment means at the beginning of the healing process or transformation process, the beta brainwaves love labels. It loves to label things because it wants to make sure that it can be safe through these labels. So what we're doing is we are taking that label, we're breaking the label down into smaller parts, and then we're also kind of unveiling the curtain to break down where exactly do you have these parts. And as we do this, we're actually shedding the label. We're breaking the confirmation biases, and we're breaking the beliefs that you don't have these parts, which is not true. You have these parts. The second step that we do is then, once we identify where you actually are able to express these parts, we then go in and say, well, what's the value to you, the uniqueness about these particular moments? And so then we go through and find through each moment, what's the uniqueness of that moment? Why specifically are you having presence in that moment? And then what that does is that begins to reveal your highest value, what's most important to you. Because what's most important to you, you will have presence in. What's not important to you, you will become more distracted in, or you will become less present in. So this also reveals that you have the trait, which begins the process of dissolving the label. Then we ask, well, why do you actually have the presence in that moment? So that we reveal what's the value of why you're able to express that in the moment. And then we get, with these two steps, we basically get a dissolution of the label itself, because as we go through this, This takes a little bit of time, of course, but this is what I present partly in my illumination experience, the one-day event, is we go through and we break these things down. Now, why is this important in the settling process? Because after you go through this and you see that you have the parts, and then you also see that they have a uniqueness to you, you develop an understanding of yourself and your authenticity and your core nature, so that there's a natural settling to remind yourself of who you are. That's automatic, because you're learning about yourself and you're like remembering who you are and what you're about. And then there's a new settling that your system's not hyper aroused and hyper vigilant that you're missing parts. And so now there's a new deeper settling, because your system's acknowledging and you're acknowledging that you actually have the parts that you thought were missing. And now, like, as an example, if you have an animal or a pet and you lost your pet or the pet ran away, you are going to be in a hyper aroused state, because in that moment you perceive you've lost your animal. Now, the animal could just be hiding under your shed in your backyard. So you may not have technically lost your animal, but you perceive you've lost your animal. And so now you're going to go into a hyper aroused state because you perceive you've lost something. It creates a natural hyperarousal. And so when we go in and we begin to look at that, you are not missing anything that you thought you were missing. And we go in and literally I felt the feeling that would come with finding your pet, the relief that comes with finding your pet. Well, there's a relief that comes with finding the part, and the relief that comes to see that you're not missing that part. It's literally the same feeling. And so each of these gives a sense of relief and a sense of settling. And as you settle into that, and then we find in the second part that there's unique value to why you're expressing these things. You build off of the relief and move into appreciation, which is a deeper level of settling. And so we first get the relief settling experience, and then the appreciation settling experience, that you are unique, that you could not only express these parts, but you uniquely express them in your unique value. And then from that wisdom that you get, you have shed a label. You're realizing, oh, well, I don't have ADHD. I have the ability to express these parts. I just didn't see where I was expressing them, and that they're very unique to me in my own unique style. And from that appreciation and from that energy births ideas, because you're connecting more into your intuition. You're connecting ideas of what your next kind of authentic steps and path is, which is really kind of step 3. Step 3 is about now using that leverage to design life according to your unique values, which will have you in a relaxed focus and a relaxed settledness and movement towards your future. So the beta waves settle, the theta waves ignite. So and you operate more from a balanced beta and alpha orientation, because you feel relaxed and more settled in your body. Nothing is missing. You're appreciating yourself for the uniqueness in who you are, and from that space of greater access to parts of you that were unattainable before, you have more connection to intuition. And then you now derive ideas that match your core nature, and you begin the planning process of moving forward. So this is really one of the mainstays that I utilize in any type of delabeling process where someone has themselves labeled, locked in, and labels serve in a movement and progression of transformation. Labels serve us. We need labels because labels give us a sense of safety. But if you're really looking for transformation, then behind the label are a bunch of beliefs and confirmation biases that you have that need to get broken. And if you don't break those, then you'll try to operate within that label, and you'll do the best you can. You just carry the baggage of the label around. And for some people, that serves them for a period of time, because they get a sense of significance and uniqueness from that label. But what I'm proposing is that in the second step, when we do this work, that's where you find your uniqueness. You don't find your uniqueness from the label and your sense of pride and significance from the label. You transition that to a higher state of consciousness where you now derive your sense of meaning and sense of self from seeing how unique you are and the flavors in which you bring uniquely into the world. You don't need the label to make you unique. You see that your highest values are what makes you unique, not the label. So you can transcend the label, knowing that you have the parts and you're unique, independent of a label. And that now creates leverage to move forward. And that really is the transformation process from the beginnings of having ADD, ADHD, to transforming that into being an exquisitely unique human being that has all these traits and that you have the capacity to use them, but you use them very uniquely. And you don't express those traits when you're not around your highest values or things that are most important to you. You will lack presence and focus, and you will be agitated, and you will be a lack of stillness when you're not expressing. Now, remember, these are wired in behaviors. These are wired in perceptions. These are wired in belief systems. You've had people that are confirming your bias. You're having people that agree with you. You can't focus. You're right. God, you can never sit still. So you're having this constant confirmation. So just remember that part of this work is to reorientate and neuroplastically change the perceptions in there so that these beta brain waves and theta and alphas can reorientate themselves to a healthier state, and you express yourself in the world in a healthier state. So that is in a nutshell what I wanted to share around ADHD today. Hopefully that kind of gives you a little bit of a framework of kind of how I work with people and what kind of the modus operandi is to move you from a state of being labeled to a state of self-acceptance, appreciation, and wholeness, and a deeper settling and acceptance of who you are. That would, to me, is the objective, because in that state, now you just move through the world way more authentically, and you release the identity that comes with having a specific label. So hopefully that's of service to you and help, and have a wonderful day. Thanks so much. Take care.